Hey everyone, welcome to part two of the ClockWorld game audio series that I'm working on. Been eager to get back into this. I just finished up doing my taxes most of this week. It was the deadline for, people in Canada if you are self-employed or have your own business. So yeah, I got that done today and I'm ready to dig right back into ClockWorld audio stuff. So I think I mentioned in the last video that my starting point with a lot of this was actually getting a bunch of clock sounds from the internet, ones that are in the public domain, and programming them into my push, and then kind of using that as inspiration for some of the sounds and tracks and stuff. And so I'll start there actually with kind of how I go about building something like that, in case that's something like a foreign idea to you. If you're a music maker and you have never done something like this, maybe you'll get an idea or two because it's really like you can do so much with throwing things into a sampler and playing around with them. It's something that I didn't really even get into until the past few years of my life, and it's completely changed the way that I approach making music sometimes. Just another tool for the belt, and it's a really good one to have. So I'm going to talk about building the clock rack. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about templating. Not too much in this one, but just a little bit about kind of how I set up my templates for ClockWorld sounds specifically. I'll typically kind of build different templates for different projects and for different situations. Like if I'm producing music, that'll have one kind of template. If I'm mixing, that'll have another kind of template, you know. So I made sort of a template that I worked with for the ClockWorld stuff that was fairly well rounded and gave me a lot of sounds to choose from. And then I'll probably dig into the main menu theme right away because it's quite short, it's quite easy and straightforward. And by then, I'm sure the video will be long enough, and I'll cut it off before I go into the next stuff for part three. So yeah, let's I think go right into Ableton and start programming the clock rack that I made. Okay. So I have this session open right now. I'm just going to build this inside of the main menu session that I have open. As you can see, this is, bar 4 to 12. It's an 8-bar loop. We're going at 63 BPM. And anyways, we'll get into the music later. Let's start with the clock rack. So I'm just going to start with an open MIDI channel. Okay. I'll maybe do this from scratch just to see what the process. I'll move myself to the other side of the screen because we're going to need to see the rack stuff. Actually, even better maybe up here. Let's go up here for now. Top right. Top right. So MIDI rack, first thing I want to do is get a drum rack. And I'm actually going to throw in front of it this MIDI effect velocity. And what I want with that is I want to make it so no matter how hard I hit a key on my piano or on the push or whatever controller, I don't want any variable velocity with these clock sounds. I just want the samples to trigger at full weight, full volume all the time. So I don't want this velocity to be curved at all. So I'm going to set my minimum to 127 and my hot output to 127. So no matter, that was an accident. No matter how hard I hit my keys, it's not like pressure dependent. Okay, that's what the velocity thing is for. Now the drum rack. Right. So first thing I did, like I said, is I went on the internet and I found public domain sounds. Freesound.org is a really good one. Just make sure if you do this kind of stuff, sort by ones that are in public domain rather than the license attribution type of licenses because you can use those too, but then you have to start keeping track of crediting all those sounds everywhere, and that can be a bit of a pain. So for this purpose, I just went with public domain sounds only. And I've pre-downloaded these into a folder called ClockWorld Sounds. I got one for the video. I got all my clocks. So I have.
All right, so
Here you go. There's 33 something sounds in here. So what I'm going to do is bring my drum rack down to C1. select all these, and I'm just going to drag them into my drum rack. So they all land in here. Give that a second to load. Now, what I have is in each of these cells here now, all the clock sounds. And I think for the clock rack that I made for the game, I kind of filtered through some of these and left a few out. So if there's extra sounds in here that we'll never use, that's fine. I just kind of want to show you the method. So when you throw these in here, all these sounds are going to be the full sample, and some of these are quite long, so that's not what we want. So I actually had to take a few hours one evening when I was setting this up to go through every single one of these. And so if I hit this key, turn it down, you see if I let go, it's still playing, and this is like a really long sample. I don't want that, so I have to go through each one, basically switch it to classic mode, and I'm going to turn the release all the way down. No, a release down and decay down. Yeah, I want sustain all the way up, so as long as I'm holding the note, it's playing, I let go, it stops. That is what I want. And then I'll select the loop in the sampler. Maybe I can make this bigger. Nope, okay. Yeah, so, and I don't need all of this, so I'm just gonna shorten the sample length here. I'm gonna zoom in, set the start point right on this first transient probably, and let's count like 1, 2, 3, 4. I think right there is a good stopping point. I can have it loop right before this guy right here. Let's see what that sounds like. So if I hold it, loops seamlessly, right? Without having to have, you know, like all 5 minutes of the sample or whatever. I can just have a couple bars. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Loops. 1, 2, 3, 4. Beauty. And then after that, you basically have to do that for every sound. Can I select all of these at once? I don't know. If there's a way to set like all of these at once to classic and everything, that's great. I'm not sure if you can do that. So I did it one by one. So I just go to the next one, hit, turn it to classic mode, turn it to loop. Let's listen to what's going on. I'll turn this one up. It's pretty noisy, this sample, so I probably wouldn't use it. There's better ones. I gotta turn the decay, the release down. Sounds. Oh shit. Triggering a few samples here. Yeah, turn the release down, turn the decay down. I mean, I'm just gonna skip that one altogether because it's too noisy. The signal to noise ratio is really bad. That one's not great either. What do we got here?
Check 3, clock ticking.
Huh. That's cool. You know, oops. That first vocal sample thing is cool, and that's something you could use somewhere. It reminds me of like Cuphead a little bit. I might just, for the sake of, like the clocks, I would do the same thing. I would go and start the sample, where the clock is ticking. And then I would just let it loop for a couple bars. If what I'm after is the ticking sound, there's a lot of ticking sounds in here. There's a few that are better than the others, but just for demonstration purposes, I'm in classic mode. I turn loop on, take my release down, take my decay down. Oop, probably a little few more. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that loop can end there. I'll just zoom in, make sure it's, I think right about there is good. So if I hit it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I accidentally triggered the next sample with my hand here. I gotta do the same thing over and over again. Classic loop. Go in here. good starting point. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 8 beats. Good enough, you know, and then do something like that. And so basically I have like these different clock like textures now, right? This is really rhythmic. You can start writing music right away on this, and that's how I ended up doing like the first theme for the level 1 was the first thing I wrote for the project. I just had one of these clock tickings going, and we'll see that when we get there, but you can experiment with throwing the warp mode on, so that these things will tick in time with your tracks. There's another one. That sounds like a metronome. It's going to keep playing because I got the release super long. It's another one, you know. But I think you get the idea. It just takes time to go through each one of these cells and selecting the sample length you want. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, and then I'll just have that pick up right before the next one. So this should loop 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Awesome. So yeah, like that's the process of making the clock rack, and after this, you know, I'd gone through all these clock sounds, and you know, I throw an EQ on it. This, you know, throwing an EQ, there's like basically no samples in here that I'm gonna want any of the sub information. I don't, you know, so I think it's pretty safe to roll off everything below 100 hertz to start, and honestly, likely higher afterwards, but just start at 100. And
2.
this is a cool one, right? And again, I don't want that. I don't need that chop there. Yeah, 1, 2. So I'll just cut that one off after 4 and have it loop again like that. I think you guys are probably getting the drift at this point. I won't do any more. 1, 2, 3, 4. It'll loop. Perfect. And the cool thing about that is now you can, you know, draw these in with MIDI. If I create a little MIDI track and I bring this up, I can go down here, you know, if I want to, and I can start drawing these notes in, you know, and put this under here. Doesn't fit right here, but I'll show you where I did use clock sounds. So yeah, that's like the really basics of it. On my actual clock rack that I finished over here, all that drum stuff is just in the rack here. I threw like a saturator, this EQ, which I'm probably, you know, automating the filters on it depending on what I'm playing. Couple you know, distortion option. I have the Camel Crusher on here, which is an awesome overdrive. The micro shift, which is also really sick. It's like the harmonizer effect. Eventide. Classic. Alright, so if I turn the EQ off, the EQ on, you can really control the sound. Camel Crusher just makes it nasty immediately. Micro shift puts it in the stereo field like really crazy. If I turn the mix on the micro shift all the way down, everything's kind of right in the middle. And then, as you see, as I increase this mix, it just blows out wide, and it's an awesome plugin by Soundtoys. Use it all the time on all kinds of stuff. And you know, I'll turn the distortions and the stereo effects on and off. The saturator obviously just brings everything out I have 10 dB of drive going in there, just analog clip mode, and yeah, so that's the clock rack, and I started there to get all these cool sounds. And what I mean by you can do this with anything is you can literally, grab any sounds you want in the world and throw them into an Ableton drum rack or instance of sampler. In this case, there are some benefits I think to using the drum rack, and start playing them, like an instrument. And you can pitch them up and down. You can, you know, completely destroy them beyond recognition and turn them into something else cool, and you just have this like infinite fountain of sounds to play with that likely no one has ever heard before because they didn't exist until you just made it. So that's the clock rack, and we're going to use that pretty much in every track. I wanted clock sounds to like tie the theme together, so there it is. I'll delete that for now. I'll delete my finished one here for now. And quickly about templating, basically for all the ClockWorld stuff, what I did was I set up a basic, I'll move myself down here again, a basic orchestra type template with a couple synthesizers as well. And this is not a representation of the full template because I've really cleaned this up. But I have it all in the order like you would see it on an orchestra score. You have woodwinds at the top, brass, keys, percussion, strings. I might actually have keys and percussion flipped here. If I'm not mistaken, it should be like that. Please don't yell at me if I got that wrong. I'm sorry. Yeah, and in the woodwinds, even though there's no woodwinds, I just kind of, in this track, there's no woodwinds. I'll show you, I'll have like an ensemble that I can just quickly turn on and play if I need to. Of course, it has to be turned on down here. You can't see because my screen is in the way, but my contact was off to save power. Yeah, but anyways, an ensemble, I have, a piccolo for high flouty stuff. Once these are all off. Whatever. The sounds, I'm using a mix between like some Contact stuff, some Spitfire stuff. I can dig into sounds later, but for these videos, I'm going to mostly, I think, just stick to the compositions because this shit is going to get really, really long. And just a general note on that too, like, there's like crazy amounts of production that you can put into like anything. Like I could have worked on any one of these tracks for weeks. Once again, going back to the thing where we had to like really have a whole game done in a month, I had to work really fast. So there's a lot of stuff when it comes to like mixing and like layering sounds and doing like production tricks and stuff that I would do in like a production that I didn't do on these yet, really, because what I wanted was a track that was ready and in the game like as fast as possible. And I made a really specific point of trying to focus on getting the compositions working, and like as far as the mix goes, they should sound good, obviously, but I'm talking like broad stroke painting at this point because speed was of the essence. So, piccolos, flutes, solo section, oboes, clarinets, bassoons, contrabassoons. Usually I might have a cor anglais in there. Yeah, and some bass clarinets, alto clarinets, all that good stuff. This is just stripped down a little bit. Brass, same thing in terms of a template. Horns, trombones, trumpets, which I would ideally actually keep at the top here. Tubas, general stuff. There's no brass in this track either. I just left them in here to kind of show the templating a bit. Percussion, this is also super stripped down. This is usually like, with the full template, there's like 100 tracks preloaded, okay? And I don't use everything every time. In this case, the track really doesn't have that many components. The other songs have more tracks than this menu theme, and we'll see that when we get to them. But for this one, I was left with a tambourine, a marimba, xylophone, Celeste triangle, glockenspiel, and here are 5 of my clock sounds that I kept. They're printed down already from the rack, and I have some different effects on them, and that I'll go through, I guess, a little bit here. 5 different sounds. Keys, I'm only left with harp and piano. Otherwise, I would have choirs and stuff in here as well. Strings, once again, I would, there's usually going to be the longs, the shorts, I'll have a third one maybe loaded that I can vary for different types of articulations. I'm kind of, floating that bridge between, like, I don't want to have a 900 track template like some orchestra guys have where they have every single articulation like ready to go. I haven't gotten that crazy yet. I'm trying to find a nice medium. If I can have a template with between 1 to 200 of these tracks with most things ready that I'll use quickly at the fingertips, so far that's been working for me. As you can see in this song, we're really left with basics, just a few sustained violins, 2 violas, the cello's a solo cello, and basses, synthesizers. I'm using Serum a lot, like it's my go-to synth for a lot of stuff. I have a Prophet that I'll use if I want to get some like fat sounds that and if I want to spend the time. In this case, I just, Serum is quick, and I'll usually have a few loaded. I got reduced down to 1. As far as my returns go, honestly, I'll use a busing system to sort of control dynamics along the way. That's usually splitting like subs from everything else and all these things. Lately, I've been fucking around with that kind of like the Skrillex sort of system that everyone poached after he posted that video, because it's kind of an ingenious way of stacking your dynamics to get really, really loud tracks. But I'm not using any subs or anything in this track, so I think actually I'm literally I'm sending all these groups to the master bus. So all of these things are being sent right to the master that have a few effects on them. I'll get to those at the end. And I'll talk more about templating, I guess, as we go, as more things appear. But in the main menu theme that we'll talk about right now, there's not too much going on. It's not a complicated thing happening. So the main menu in this song, as I explained in part 1 of these series, I took the classic grandfather clock tune that most of you, if you've heard one of these clocks in your life, will recognize. And it usually sounds like this. Right? Really familiar tune. That's just going from C major down to G major, back up to C major. Great. And all I did was I took the first chord to C major, went minor instead, and then instead of going down to the 5th, the G, because that would still sound too like, well, it works, but I actually really liked just going down to the B flat instead for the second chord. It suddenly becomes super epic, So if I do it with the G, it sounds like this. And that's fine, but with the B flat, I like it better. It sounds like this. Down to the F here instead. Way prettier in my mind. So I recorded that on the piano and I doubled it on the harp. And that's sort of where I started with this one. And it sounds like this. I let the reverb and the like sounds kind of die all the way because there's other cool spatial stuff happening that I wanted to leave space for. Second half just takes the melody up to the harmony. Seeing if there's any automation here. Nothing really. And don't mind that. That was my I spilt water on my keyboard, so I was having these high notes just triggering by themselves. So on this piano track, that's why I have the range cut off on the thing. It's not relevant to the track at all. So yeah, and both these sounds are just right out of Contact. They sound great, and I'm not, I'm not even EQing or anything. There's just like right out of the box. There we go. Sounds very nice. So the next thing, let's go to the percussion. I have a tambourine that's just on the beat, I think. Yeah, there you go. Add the marimba. It's following the piano line, and this is just arrangement, like everything in this theme is already inside, like musically speaking, is already inside the piano, and everything else in this track is just dressing up that melody and that chord base, So the marimba, add the xylophone. Yeah. Celesta. There we go. We're going to loop now, add the triangle in. Just put this loop spot right there. Most important guy in the band, dude, is the fucking... Awesome. Glockenspiel. So already this is like way more magical, Let's put the harp and the piano back in. Okay, I'm gonna come back to the clocks at the end because I'll show you like the entire difference it makes when you just have the music and then you add the clock sounds in. It's everything. So then what? Strings. Basses. You feel the low end come in. The cello is doing the melody, so I'll just go right to the violas first. I'll just add the violins. It's kind of hard to hear them right now, so I'll just put those together. Just the strings without the... And if you look, I've programmed in modulation. So it's the dynamics. You can see these curves down here. This is controlling like how hard the players is actually bowing. It's quite soft. If I were to pull all these up, you see it becomes overpowering immediately. So like when it comes to string programming and brass programming and a lot of like orchestra instruments, programming in the dynamics is well worth your time. It can be the difference between sounding somewhat human versus just not that great. And then of course the solo cello is playing the melody. It's just the contact with the reverb, a little reverb on it. Really quick, I'll throw in the synths here. I just have this pad, I think it's called Super Saw, but I think it's just a pad. It adds a lot. It's really pretty. All right, it just big. So I'll put all the instruments in without the clocks. There it is. Right? Sounds awesome. I'm gonna hear some things ringing out. That's fine. Let's look at these clocks real quick. So these are the sounds I put in here. First one. So I think this is already pitch shifted from my original sample, and you'll notice there's some stuff going on here. So first thing, glue compressor. This is just managing some of the dynamics on here. I'll turn these off for a second. So I have it on really like aggressive ratio. It's 10 with fast attack, fast release. So it's slamming on that. I want it to like, hit without it. With it. Yeah, it's actually, rather than hitting it, it's just making it really consistent. That's a more accurate statement. I just want it to be like pretty much a little more straight across. So that's good. A little erosion, just to add a little, watch. If I exaggerate this, that's what I'm adding in, is this kind of high-end noise texture. This helps it really kind of like find itself as a space in the background. And I only have a little bit, 10% off. But you can hear it, like these grains in the background. Yeah, it does something cool. Black Hole. This is one of my favorite reverb plugins. It is based off of a preset on an old Eventide Studio rack. I think it's off the 3000. I would have to double check that. But there's a preset called Black Hole that just has this really awesome, crazy reverb. I use this for like extreme effects usually, like something really, if I want it to sound otherworldly, I'll throw this on something to see what it does. And I'm pretty sure I have some automation with this plugin. Yeah. So if you see the mix, you can see that I'm really throwing the first tick 70% mix, or no. 0.7 here doesn't relate to 70%. It relates to 55% on the plugin. But you can see that for the second one, it drops all the way down to 0. So the second clock is dry. So you're getting this like, pa, click. And then the third one is on, but not quite as intense. And then you'll hear that ring out over these next ones, which the reverb disappears entirely. So you can watch the mix knob here as this automation goes on, but more than anything, just listen how that first hit is thrown out into a cosmic abyss, and then it's kind of just drawn in a little bit, and that adds like this crazy breathing effect to the whole track that I absolutely love. So check this out. Down. Yeah. Listen to the space on. If you make music, you can hear what's going on. If you're just watching this for fun, you might have to like throw some headphones on to really hear that. But it's fairly obvious once you know what you're listening for. So That's the first clock sound. Oh no, and then LFO tool. What am I doing here? Okay, I'm using this LFO tool is one of my favorite on just throw and go envelope shapers, volume shapers. So every half bar, it's actually dipping that sound in, which is going to help with the breathing effect because it's like ducking it back. Watch, you can see it on here as it goes, like that. Yeah. Subtle, but that's going to help clean up the mix a little bit, especially with this crazy reverb, this black hole. It can get really muddy fast if you don't be careful. So, yeah, that's why I would have put that on. Next clock sound. Here we go. So this guy's panned to the left a little bit. It's just more ticking, a little auto pan. So it's moving a little bit in the stereo field, and I've removed all this low end, you know, I don't need it. I like that they're not on time together. Okay, next one. What do we got here? This is cool. You know what this is? This is the same as clock 2, but I reversed it. Watch if I hit R. Yeah. These two are, oh yeah, no. Yes. Yeah, you can see these two are the same audio. So if I play it straight, it's just that ticking, but I reversed it. You hit R in Ableton and then bam, your audio is now playing backwards. And now you have this cool, swoopy. You play with this one. It's just cool. I like that. So the next one, these look like bells. Yeah. Just big old bells. I see I have a tuner on here, so I was probably tuning this. Either I didn't end up tuning it, or it was close, or what. I probably wanted it to be in the key of C. I wanted the bell to hit like a C note, because that's what the melody is in. And 441, right? For some reason the tuner is not picking that up. Well, fuck me, right? Anyways, really slow auto pan. So it's also moving in the stereo field. I use a lot of, you'll see in these videos on the clock sounds, there's always some kind of movement plugins happening, and black hole once again. 50% on gravity. This gravity knob is the shit, dude. You fucking crank this. Watch. Watch if I turn my gravity all the way fucking up. Okay, hold on. This is not a good example. It does crazier shit sometimes. Well, there it is. Nothing crazy with the black hole, just some ambiance for that big old clock. And then the last one, a little faster, a little more cadence. So all these clocks together. Yeah. I like it. Everything all together. You have the main menu, sad grandfather clock theme. Yeah, that's all. So with the clock, so once again, I love it. I love having those mismatched timings because you get this like instead of just bop boop bop boop, and it just adds this whole layer of motion to everything, and it did that for all the tracks, I think, which is just so cool. It was such an interesting idea to get to play around with. Given more time, you could really expand and take this out. I just had it looping because it's a simple menu theme, but I mean, you can take all this shit and start throwing in horns galore, or whatever you want, because it's sky's the limit. Really, you could. Whatever. We'll play with horns in the other songs. I use horns later. I like horns. Horns are cool. So that's the menu theme. The only thing left is, the master bus. I'm not doing a lot. The first thing, utility, this is making everything below 100 hertz mono, 130 actually, mono. Compressor, I have it set to slow attack, quick release, ratio of 4. I'm probably not doing too much with it. Yeah, it's just kissing the needle. Really simple. A little EQ, take out the super lows. 80 hertz, just a little bump. And 360, just a little notch taken out. Fab filter, limiter. I'm not doing a lot of limiting. This output volume right now, I guess I'm in the way. I have the output volume set to -10. This is only indicative of me trying to get the mix on this video to sit well with my microphone. In terms of like volumes for game music, I just, I'm trying to mix actually around. For the stuff that's going in the game, I'm leaving it around -23 LUFS, which is quite low, but it's like a broadcast standard kind of thing. You don't need to be smashing, you're not making a rock record or pop record or whatever here. There's no need to smash the meters in any sense unless you want to distort some tracks because that sounds cool. But on the master in the game engine, like -23 with some dynamic range, I found works quite well. I'll learn more about that the more I do this stuff, but really. So with the limiter, I think I have +22 going into here, so I'm probably just chopping the head off of some peaks. Maybe. Yeah. Just a little bit. You see, I'm hitting minus, yeah, So it's going up to like -18 on the loud end and -27 on the quieter end. That's like fine, I'm -23 average roughly is what I went for, and mix wise I think it turned out okay. And that's it. Okay, that's it. That's it for the main menu theme. Let's do this middle thing again. Yeah, this is already like I think a pretty long video, so I'll cut it off here. On the next one, I'll dig into the hub world, and maybe I'll do hub and level 1 in the same video, or maybe I'll just switch. I'll just do one track at a time because these I don't necessarily want these all to be super long. So yeah, I hope that was somewhat interesting. This is probably the track with the least amount of stuff happening. The rest are more exciting. We can dig into some cool stuff. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it here. I hope you guys have a great week. I'll try and get the other ones up, maybe a little quicker than one per week, but we'll see how it goes. I have a few things on my plate right now that I want to do, and awesome. So stay well, be safe out there. Black Lives Matter. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Fuck all this racist shit, man. Let's take care of each other out there, okay? All lives matter too. They do, yes, but like, fucking, now's not the time for that shit. It's not. Let's fucking help our brothers and sisters out there, for real. For real. All right, guys. Until the next one. Peace.